Hello everyone, and welcome back to what will be the final dev diary for By Blood Alone. In this ultimate development, we're going to be looking at some of the art and very important achievements that are going to be coming with the DLC, as well as some tad-bit small bits on the side. Once all is said and done though, this is it. So, I guess with that being said, let's finish this. So the dev diary begins by giving people who are interested an opportunity to read through some of the processes that are happening for when they choose to design different pieces of artwork for focuses, characters, and the programs they use. So one tool they use, as they describe, is called Miro. In it they describe how they use it as a sort of spreadsheet whiteboard in which they decide how they're going to do research for focus trees and features. And as things build up, they're going to have to find out what they can use, what's copyrighted, people spend time designing stuff, and overall, hopefully have something good to work with. We're then given an example of a Miro board for, in this case, the art designer, who has a long schedule seen at the top, all of the things they had to do for focus trees, because this particular artist had to do all the focus tree related art, as well as the plane designer stuff, which they also had to do. They also have a corner of shame. So I'm not quite sure what's going on in that corner of shame, but I think it's probably something shameful. And moving on, we see an example of how they would turn this request into an icon. So they've got this rectangular rounded off shape within it with the focus ID for the Grande Rivolta Rurale. And in it, they've got some images of kind of the things they're looking for, a mixture between the actual donkey itself and then perhaps some of the equipment it would have with it. And then below we see the actual image they did use in the end, and it basically takes a lot of the ideas coming forth. They've got the donkey there, although it's flipped on the other side, but it does look like it's that particular donkey standing in the snow. They've got 2 bushels of wheat, which have made it onto the icon on either side, and then they've got the nice blue background, which I think we can see in the top left is the kind of look they were going for, and that's kind of the full image complete. On the flip side, of course, there could be times when they don't have as much information, in which case they're just sort of putting out vague questions on the horizon. For an African joint development program, you'd probably want something to do with Africa, maybe a silhouette of Africa, and since it's to do with development, probably maybe something to do with railroads and industry. And in the end, that's the kind of look they've got, with their global sort of view of Africa, with a railroad track and a factory on it. Pretty straightforward. The next section, because this is a dev diary talking about art, is going to be talking about how the main menu background, which is what we're going to be seeing here, is made, with some original concept arts being drawn up between 2 fighters, because this dev diary and this DLC is about the fighters, isn't it? So with a new big fighter rework coming, or planes in general, they're going to want to stick in some background to do with planes fighting. Having decided on the general core image they're going to be looking for, they then start to mock up some kind of colour images, and here we see they're choosing between a more day palette, a sunset or evening palette, and then a nighttime one. It is cool that these are the things that are happening behind the scenes, but watching this and looking at this did give me a thought. Wouldn't it be interesting if there was an animated background? Of course, it's entirely unnecessary to the core gameplay, but when I'm just looking at the art right now, it is kind of cool to imagine that you open up the game and maybe, or here's an even better idea. I've got 2 ideas. I'm thinking quickly. One of them is the background is animated, maybe some clouds moving in the background or some bullets firing, but also imagine they did it where, depending on the time that you opened up the game, the image would be day, sunset, evening or morning, and nighttime. A completely unnecessary feature, but when the art's that good, you just you really get the vibe. The dev diary goes on to show us how some of these colour palettes are used once they've decided on the vibe they're going for, which is here a sunset evening vibe. Moving forward, there's some discussion about how to create the look of the planes. Sometimes you don't have to start from scratch, but they've actually got the 3D artist who makes the models for the planes for the DLC to take those and stick them in poses so that they can be painted over. So the planes that you see in the following image, this image, are actually the planes that are the models in game that have just been touched up to match kind of the aesthetics of the desktop background kind of look, but it's actually the planes in the game, which I think is quite a cool thing, that, you know, the actual planes in the game are the actual planes that you're looking at in this image. And once all is said and done, the effects are added, the colours and the effects are matched more so that the background and the planes feel they fit to the same level of familiarity. You end up with something that looks like this, with the wind trails coming off the wings, the propellers in full motion, and the drama of the scene is very much so alive. Really good. So, with that part done, maybe some of you skipped it, maybe some of you didn't. Now we're just going to take a quick look through some of the different types of art they've made for this particular DLC, some of the new icons they have, and what they could possibly mean in some circumstances, although I think we've pretty much seen most of them at this point. So for this image we're looking at, well, there's the legendary horse icon, which I think looks great, and if they ever did a Mongolia focus tree, which would be a weird one, that would definitely be at the forefront. Here's like a papal one for some Pope related stuff, I suppose. Of course down here we've got some Swiss related ones, including the legendary dog spirit thing that they were talking about. On the right we see tons of new different advisors that you can get in different various positions, and below we see some focus icons, primarily for the Italian focus tree, which I think for the most part we've seen in Dev Diaries, but there could possibly be some new ones in there. Moving further down, we see some Ethiopian focus tree art. There's the horse returning, gotta love ourselves a horse. A United Africa, oof, wonderful. And there's Haile Selassie going head to head with Mussolini. And then finally at the bottom, we've just got a few Swiss national focus icons to look at. Most of them I've noticed involving the Swiss flag. I feel like when it comes to Switzerland, their flag is their pride of place. Although they still have the building. I've noticed the building does keep making its appearance. Next up, we've got portraits, and we start off with some Italian portraits. And yeah, I don't have anything negative to say about them, really. I think they're all quite fitting within the structure of the art style. This one reminding me of the Spanish Civil War, when you've got the people, like the council, deciding what they're doing during the Spanish Civil War. We've got some African leaders, some people who are clearly serving in Africa, and maybe some of the more traditional generals who might have seen combat during World War I. Moving down, there are more women being added to the game, because that's always something that, I mean, when HOI first released, I don't even know how many women were in the game. Were there any? There probably must have been some. But there's more here, and we've got this lad. Now, I'm not sure who this lad is. He must be somebody famous, because he's got a cracking portrait. But where is his neck? This poor man. His just goes straight into his shoulder there. Poor guy. Moving on, we've got Switzerland, and even though these lads are all looking very dapper, whether you're serving in the army or you've got a wonderful bow tie, the pride of place is, of course, the new Switzerland Federal Assembly, I believe it's called, which has got, it almost just looks like a photograph. I can't tell. I mean, the flag looks like it's kind of painted, but it does look very high quality. Even the clouds in the background is like, it doesn't use a traditional coloured background. It's got this just a blue sky. So yeah, interesting. I do wonder, is that just a photograph? Strange. And lastly, we've got some Ethiopian portraits, with Haile Selassie getting a new portrait. I wonder if they're going to use his original portrait for things, because his original portrait was kind of a regal, maybe something he wore in his later life, and I feel like this portrait is maybe him younger during the actual Italian-Ethiopian war, so he's probably dressed more like a general, he's slightly younger, and he's slightly more grizzled for what's going on. He doesn't look as... he kind of looks kind of stressed, looking off to the left. And again, we see another one of these council room portraits. They're making quite the show up. And, of course, a tribal leader. And this guy just looks great, doesn't he? He just looks fantastic. I do wonder if anybody's going to be getting characters like this and trying a world conquest. I think that could definitely be something to see. And with that, art is that section of this dev diary done. But I can imagine many people have probably come for the second half. And that's achievements, because achievements, I mean, to some extent, achievements can make or break the experience of some people's HOI4 experience. Experience? I probably said experience too many times. With that being said, let's see what some of these achievements are and give our take on how good, bad, easy, ridiculous they might be. And you get a canton, and you get a canton, everybody gets a canton, as Switzerland have 24 states. So this is of course a reference to Oprah Winfrey and her rather famous game show. It was just more of a talk show, wasn't it, where she announced that her entire audience was going to get cars. You get a car, everybody gets a car. And that is of course the reference with her doing her pose there as Switzerland. So the flavour is nice, but in terms of the actual achievement, I'm going to say I don't think it's that hard, especially when we learned that a lot of cantons you can get, let's say, diplomatically, although how many you can actually get diplomatically is remain to be seen. I think what's key about this is there's no real core requirement of which states you can get and how you can get them. So to put this to you another way, let's say you went fash as quickly as you could, joined with the Axis, and went after France, and you went straight for the capitulation. There are quite a few islands all over the Atlantic, the Pacific, parts of the Indian Ocean, of course, which France owns, which are probably pretty uncontested. So if it's just about getting states, then I don't think you really need to worry too much about where you're getting them. Just try and get some really weak states from somebody who's probably not going to contest you too much by having an ally nearby. For example, until the Middle East gets even more of an update, there are probably quite a few states you can get in the Middle East without anybody coming after you, so long as you ask Italy for some access to go through them and use their ports and stuff. At that point, maybe you can cheese your way through it. But we'll get to cheese in a minute. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. As Switzerland declare war on Germany and win. This is, of course, a reference to Watchmen, who watches the Watchmen, and Rorschach when he is sentenced to prison and tells everybody that the criminals are not going to be screwing with him, he's going to be screwing with them. In terms of the actual achievement, I mean, the core behind it is pretty straightforward. It's not a confusing achievement. I don't think it requires any meta strategy, but making sure you place yourself in an intelligent position to win, I think, is the core. Maybe you could join the Allies and really help France defend its front line, and maybe you can just outlast the Germans. There could be a few ways to go about doing it. Swiss cheese. As Switzerland annex 5 states that are not contiguous with each other or Switzerland. So, unlike the previous one, I think this one is slightly odd with how it's worded in saying not contiguous with each other, so not connected, as is why it's called Swiss cheese, with each of the holes of the cheese being Swiss territory. So, the only question I have, and it's related to earlier, is do islands count as not contiguous territory? Because if it does, you just need to get 5 islands in the ocean. Maybe go to war with France, go island hopping, perhaps you could go quickly after Britain and take some territory that they have. If you do that, it won't be as difficult as it could be compared to other achievements. You shall not pass! As Switzerland win a defensive war without ever losing Western Swiss Alps, Eastern Swiss Alps, or Ticino. I think this is the flip side of the declare war on Germany and win achievement, except this time it's the be declared on by Germany and win achievement, and you're probably going to have to play this in a similar way to the way that you played the Netherlands, which, is it called treading the narrow line, I believe is the achievement, where you have to defend your territory and not lose any core. In the same way, you're probably going to have to defend Switzerland, get some really good entrenchment, try and use your anti-air as best you can, and just hold out until the Americans can maybe do some D-Daying. Depending on how easy that cheese is to achieve, I'm going to say it's medium, probably not too difficult in terms of tech, and more so about just waiting it out. Oh, and by the way, it's a reference to Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, in case you somehow didn't know that. The Lion That Roared. As Ethiopia, without being in a faction, forced the Italians to make peace. Again, since this is the second Italian-Ethiopia war, that's where the again comes from, and you are the Ethiopian Abyssinian lion, so that's the lion that you are. and you're going to have to try and do it without being in a faction. So basically, win the war as Ethiopia. I think that's just the achievement. Considering that Italy is a major nation at the start of the game with quite a hefty army, mountaineers, and a lot of work that they can do, because you are effectively the tutorial eating nation, I'm going to say this is going to be hard, but maybe not as hard as it could be compared to some other aspects, but it's probably going to be slightly difficult. The Lion King. As Haile Selassie, declare yourself King of Kings and control Kenya and Tanzania. The Lion King being, of course, the Disney film, and King of Kings, I think, is the path you take where you win completely. As Haile Selassie, you don't run away, and getting Kenya and Tanzania is just something you do following on the side. So pretty much if you've done the previous achievement, don't you go straight into doing this achievement? I feel like they come side by side. In other words, if you've done the previous one, you should be able to do this one, I would imagine. The time for Africa. As Ethiopia, found the African Union and have it encompass at least 13 different countries with capitals in Africa. Now, as for this time for Africa, I think this is not the first song we've had by her, is it? Because we've already got the Grand Colombian My Ships Don't Lie, but this time we've got Shakira, who's doing her arms in the air like that, reminiscent of the dance that she does in the song Waka Waka, is it? And then, of course, the final part of that song is This Time for Africa. On the other side, we've got the actual contents of the achievement, with encompassing 13 different countries with capitals in Africa. In my experience, when it comes to stuff like this, I think the best way to go about doing it is making sure you head south, because south has the weaker countries. We're talking like Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, Malawi, Botswana. Those countries typically don't have much going on and won't have much competition going in them. So if you hold a good front and not worry too much about what's happening in the north, going south can be sometimes the easiest path forward. Crusader Kings 4. Take Jerusalem as Ethiopia and move the capital there. Well, we haven't got Crusader Kings 4 in terms of games. We're still on free. But in terms of taking Jerusalem as Ethiopia and moving the capital there, is this not, and I could be wrong, an easier version of the original Crusader Kings achievement with South Africa? Because Crusader Kings 1 was, I think, taking Jerusalem as South Africa. This one is pretty much the same, except it's closer. It's not as far to go. So you could quite possibly have the jump on the Allies. And even more than that, I've just realised, the Red Sea, you could hypothetically get some naval superiority and just go there direct, because in the very southern tile of Palestine you have naval access to the Red Sea. So in theory you could just land there and go straight there without even fighting. Just hold your front line, naval supremacy, go straight there and run to Jerusalem and pray they have no unit there. That could be possible. Very difficult to say about that achievement, not sure. Speaking of the Red Sea, as Ethiopia, go communist and take all the states that border the Red Sea. So what are we looking at there? You're going to have to go to war with, in theory, well, Italy, because they're there. French Somaliland is in the way, so that's kind of unfortunate. So French Somaliland's got to be taken out. We're going for Sudan and Egypt and Palestine, so probably going to have to take England or the United Kingdom out. Then you've got Saudi Arabia. Well, they don't really have too much going on, so that's pretty straightforward. And then you've got Yemen, but you can't quite go to Yemen because you're an analyst. But if you do, that should be all of them. In short, I don't see any reason you couldn't work alongside the Axis powers, especially post-defeating Italy. So yeah, I'd say if you're going for Crusader Kings 4, you could do this in tandem with doing the Red Sea, although the Red Sea one might be slightly more difficult. As I say, you have to work alongside the Axis, not joining them, because of the whole communist part. But especially using them as a blocker in Libya while you sweep around and take what you can is entirely possible. And since you're communist, you can war Yemen and Saudi Arabia, so that should give you another front to push from. Holy, Roman, and an empire. As the Pope, restore Rome. So, Pope. Surely they haven't hinted at there being a possible papal path for this game that they just haven't talked about at all. Surely not. And if they had talked about such a thing, it appears it also has a mixed version with Rome, because both of them are on the same side of the tree, that you can get a papal Rome, which is, I guess, a joint version. I'm not sure what you'd call that. Papal Rome, maybe. Just straight up call it Papal Rome. Not too much I can say about this one, because we don't know too much about the core of the buffs and strats you can do with the Pope, but considering you're starting playing as Italy, and they have a pretty good baseline to go to war anyway, I assume it's not going to be as difficult as it has been in the past, since focus trees in general allow countries to get buffed up, and I do not see any reason to doubt that with Italy. Pizza time! As Italy, occupy New York, Chicago, and Hawaii. So this is a reference to Spider-Man 2, is it? The old game? I remember playing it because I remember absolutely hating the fact that I'd stick onto the side of skyscrapers when I was trying to deliver the pizzas and get confused about the camera angles. I was a kid when I played that game. But I definitely remember it. I remember the arcade you could go into. There was like an arcade. Anyway, nobody cares about that. So, the achievement itself is asking you to go to New York, Chicago and Hawaii, which are of course all cities owned by the United States. So the long and short of it is invade the United States and probably just go straight for a capitulation, because going for the individual islands, especially Hawaii, which is probably going to be a nightmare because they're probably going to defend it, because the AI is like that these days, it could be just easier to straight up capitulate the United States by going for them as early as possible and then just annexing everything. So I guess you would do this by going for France, going for the UK, trying to tag in Canada so you can annex them in the peace deal, and then attacking the United States early when they probably haven't developed or kind of built up as much. If you do it in that order, in the traditional way that people usually speedrun Italy, I think it should be okay. Collect all the Romes. As Italy, continue holding on to the first Rome and gain the second and third Rome. So the first Rome is just Rome, right? Italian Rome. The second Rome being Byzantium. So that's going to be annexing Turkey, and the third Rome is going to be Russia. So that's pretty good because it means you can do it by playing historical Italy. You can join the Axis, go after Turkey, take that down, and then use Turkey as a staging ground in the south as well as the Caspian, to launch on naval invasions into Ukraine and Crimea. That was probably not a thing I should have said right now, but you hear me out anyway. And then going straight for Russia and taking out Moscow. And that should be all 3 Romes. Nothing personal, Adolf. As Italy, take Austria before the Anschluss and never enter a faction with a fascist Germany before 1945. Well, I've seen no reason to believe that Italy cannot justify claims at the start of the game. They start off fash, they don't have anything blocking them. So literally, as soon as the game begins, justify war goals against Austria, and then that's it, right? That's it. That's the achievement. I don't see anything else to this achievement. You could probably do this in, what, an hour, maybe? Less? I don't know. Doesn't seem too difficult at all. But the achievement makes sense, I guess. And it's a play off the old saying, nothing personal, kid, when you completely dominate somebody. Not today. As communist Italy, save Gramsci from the brink of death, make him the leader of Italy, and form the Italian Nation Union. Oh, Italian National Union, I'm sorry. In terms of not today, it's a pretty vague achievement title, but judging by the description talking about saving him from the brink of death, I'm going to say it's a reference to Arya Stark in Game of Thrones. What do we tell the god of death? Not today. All I can say to that is, why would the HOI devs want us to remember Season 8? Why would they do that? Why would they do that to us? And for that reason, I hate this achievement. But in terms of actual doing the achievement, I think it's pretty straightforward, because I think you just follow the focus tree path down and then do a civil war. And I think after that, once you've let Gramsci rest for a while, he should be good to go. This time, it will stick. As any allied nation, in faction with a democratic Britain, enforce a peace deal on Germany that disarms the Rhineland and makes it a demilitarized zone. So this is a cool achievement in the fact that it's open. I really like achievements that don't really have a concrete way of achieving them. You get to choose how you want to go about doing it. So as any allied nation, let's say we're doing it as France, you would have to fight off Germany, and after they've done Rhineland, you can defeat them, and in the peace deal, just ask to demilitarize the 2 Rhineland states, unless it only wants you to demilitarize the bottom one, because I know there's 2 states that make up the demilitarized zone, but if it's only asking for the bottom one, it's just asking you to make use of the new peace deal system. So it's only as easy as it is for you to capitulate Germany. So I guess that's up to you to decide how easy it is for you to do that. You could tag this with the Swiss achievement earlier. There was an achievement about capitulating Germany by declaring war on them. So you could do these 2 achievements in tandem. Okay, only 3 more. By beer alone. As Germany, control Budweis, Qingtao maybe, and Guinness directly or through a faction member. So by beer alone is of course a play on the title of the DLC. What it's asking you to do though, I think, is control the cities. I don't think they're states. I think they're the cities where famous beers are made. So Budweiser is Czech. So I think, yeah, it's Czech, isn't it? So that would be Czech. But I don't think there's a city called Budweis, is there? It'd be something more Czech sounding, like Budweiser, Budwitzer. I don't know. Sorry, I'm not as clued in for that one. Next up, we've got Tsingtao, which I think used to be a German-owned colony, correct? Maybe? I'm pretty sure that it used to be a German colony. So, and I could be wrong, but isn't there in the Kaiser focus tree the ability to request it or get a claim on it? So that could be something that would be useful for doing this. And finally, we have Guinness, which is going to be a quick trip into Ireland. So all in all, if I was to guess on that front, the ways you could do that is, I guess you could just go historical Germany, justify on Ireland at the start of the game, get Ireland done, do your focus tree to get Czechoslovakia, and that's the Budweis one done, and then possibly you could straight up dismantle the Axis, join the Greater East Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere, and then use that as a front to gain some war score, and then request Qingzhou from Japan, and then that should be it. That should be all 3. Of course, you could just by being a part of the Japanese faction get it. So in that case, it's actually not difficult at all. It's very straightforward. The penultimate achievement is by merit alone. Promote a unit commander to a general and then reach max level. So the promoting a unit commander to a general, I don't think is difficult at all. I think it's literally the way that we recruit generals now. But reaching max level, is this another one where it's like the Chinese Waking the Tiger one, where you have to grind a general to the max level? Because if that's the case, oh no, this could be quite a boring achievement where you just have to find a place where you know the enemy is going to relentlessly attack you just to farm your commander. So yeah, probably potentially not a fun achievement. Might require you to play in Asia to do it. So good luck to you on that one. And finally, we have Snakes on a Plane, in reference to the film Snakes on a Plane, is it? With Samuel L. Jackson? As Brazil, capture Rome with paratroopers. So interestingly, a South American achievement. I didn't even consider South America being relevant to this DLC, but there it is. How would you go about doing that? I suppose you could just join the Allies, help them in Libya, get to Malta, and start paratrooping into places like Sicily, and then using each subsequent step as a staging ground for your next paratroop into places like Rome, especially as the war's getting on and they're losing troops, or maybe as they're on the Russian offensive and all their troops aren't defending Rome as well. Since it requires paratroopers, it's actually not too bad. I guess it's just how much air superiority you're going to manage. So get building planes and you should be good to go. Not too bad. Okay, that probably went on for a little bit too long. Sorry if it did. So I'm gonna quickly rush through the final part, which is just looking through some of the art we see here, including some of the characters we saw in previous dev diaries of the red shirts with their black berets and an Ethiopian man on a horse. Next up, we've got some wonderful T-posing soldiers, which I think is what everybody came here to see, including their legendary backpacks. Whether you're serving in Africa, or serving on the Western Front or the Eastern Front, you're going to be T-posing to victory. In addition, we have some cute tanks, because I think there are some extra small tanks being added, and we can see that, yeah, that is a particularly, it's almost looking steampunk, isn't it? That tank at the top there. Goodness me. Here are some adorable planes, including, of course, the plane that we saw in the fronts at the start of the dev diary, and how they're used and modelled in certain ways that you can create art from them. In the middle, we see, and I'm going to bring my cursor in, what looks like a jet, or like a microjet, potentially. So some future, like, modern planes getting models, as well as this plane on the right here, which is an absolute heifer. Just look at the size of that thing. It's huge. That looks like an American made to me. And I think these are the Japanese Zeros, aren't they? God, that thing is massive. Okay, and with that, that was this week's dev diary. Again, sorry if I rambled too much, but I just thought I'd explain what the achievements were and give you some general ideas about how you could start approaching them and some very immediate thoughts. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this was informative. I'm looking forward to it because this is the end. This is the end of the By Blood Alone dev diary discussions before we start actually playing the game. So thank you. And with that, I'll say this. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you all when I see you.